You are now entering the world of a movie review. A world full of drama, joy, ridicule, movie spoilers, unpopular opinions, and adult humor for as far as the eye can see. Welcome to An Evening at the Movies.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to An Evening at the Movies, everybody's favorite movie based podcast where we eat stale popcorn, drink watered down sodas, and talk about all of our favorite movies and why we love them. And if you know the intro, you also know we also talk about the horrible movies too. Not that often, but we do not movie shame on the show. So, with all of that said, we are officially kicking off holiday season 2023. And if you remember correctly, last year we did not do holiday movies very much, if at all. So I think we need to load up on the holiday movies this year, big time. And we're going to do that with this movie. But before I get to the movie, I need to welcome in our guest for the night, who is making his debut on the show. Welcome, Joshua.
Hey, thank you. I'm excited to be here, Casey. You know I love movies. I love Christmas movies this time of the year, and I'm excited to sit down and discuss one of my favorite holiday movies.
I mean, this is. We'll get into my whole thoughts on the movie. I don't necessarily want to, give away the whole thing before we even get started. But we're going to be discussing a incredibly stupidly funny movie that just happens to be a very underrated classic. We're going to discuss the Arnold Schwarzenegger holiday movie, Jingle All the Way.
Bit of a controversial movie, that's for sure. People
Yeah,
tend to either love it or hate it. There's not much kind of in between.
I mean, I get the whole aspect of why people might not necessarily get behind it.
Right?
I also get, other reasons why they may not enjoy it. I mean, there's definitely multiple aspects that can be attributed to why people may or may not enjoy this movie. And I'm sure at some point one or both of us will bring up most of those. But um, before we get going, really quick, I need to give the background information. Um, Jingle All the Way released on November 22nd, 1996. It was directed by Brian Levant. It was released by 20th Century Fox. Had a $75 million budget and made $129.8 million at the box office. Wow. I remember seeing this movie in the movie theater, and I still didn't feel like it was that big of a box office. But
Well, one thing I do want to point out, since we're discussing this, is the fact that Space Jam premiered the week before on the 15th. And
mhm.
so that is something to take into account when looking at the box office of this movie, I feel. Because anytime you have two kids' movies going against each other and one with Looney Tunes and Michael Jordan, I mean, it's a classic, that's definitely going to take some of the thunder.
Oh, easily. And I mean, we haven't discussed Space Jam yet on an evening at the movies, but I am very set in my mindset that it is an amazing movie that I enjoyed thoroughly, and I did go see Space Jam on opening day when it came out.
Oh, I love Space Jam. It's definitely one of my favorite movies. When you get ready to do it, man, if you need a guest, let me know.
Um, I definitely will do that as well.
Hmm.
Um, let's see what else we got for background information. Oh, yes. So, um, in case you didn't look it up, this is the portion of the show where we discuss the Rotten Tomato score. Would you like to wager a guess as to what its Rotten Tomato score is?
Boy, I would have to guess it's going to be pretty low. I'm going to guess it's going to be in that rotten area. Um, I know it definitely got nominated for some Razzies, at least one Razzie, and several stinkers. So I'm gonna put it below 30.
You would be correct.
All right.
Okay, for one, the critic tomato meter gave it a 20% on 46 reviews, and the on 100,000 fan votes, it has a Rotten Tomato score of 39%.
Ouch.
So the fans got it a little bit more right, but still, neither score is a very favorable score at the end of the day.
No.
So, and then if anybody wants to check out um, Jingle All the Way and take a trip down memory lane, you can find it on Disney Plus right now.
That is correct. That is where I watched it.
Same here, only because I know I have it on DVD, and for the life of me, I don't know where it's at because um, I'm pretty sure I don't know the official number, but I've got probably close to several thousand DVDs to go through. And even though I have everything logged on a list on my laptop, it still takes forever to go through that freaking list to find
Even
where
with the
things
Dewey
are.
Decimal. Gotcha.
hmm So, all right. So, first question of the episode: is there anything in particular about this movie that you absolutely, positively fell in love with?
Yeah. Turbo Man. Just the concept itself. Um, I loved it. Growing up, definitely was a huge Power Rangers fan, and just the whole idea of like the toy in the movie, what it could do. I was like, that looks cool. I want one. Um, so I absolutely fell in love with that. It's also the reason for one of my favorite scenes in the movie, which is the big tentpole action scene at the end that I'm sure we will get into later, so I won't go too much into it. But that's probably one of my favorite aspects of the movie. Only second to it being one of the movies that Arnold does, where he kind of plays an average guy. He's not super commando. He's not out there hunting predators. He's just your regular average bad dad. And I like him playing that role and just happen to be a big guy versus being like the tough action guy.
Well, too, and I think you got to remember this is probably fairly early in Arnold's comedic movie presence. I mean,
Right,
I,
it's around the time he did the three because he did Twins, Kindergarten Cop, and Junior. Those along with this
yeah,
one are kind of his more comedic roles that
I
he's
think
done.
Twins came out in the late '80s, and the other two were early to mid '90s, and then this probably was the next one. So these are probably the first four comedic roles that he really did. At times, if you put him in the right environment, Arnold could be a really funny actor, and I think this is one of those times that, um, like, so one of the fun facts that I found while researching and doing my notes for this is the fact that Sinbad was not the first choice to play Myron.
That's right.
It was, if I remember correctly, one Joe Pesci.
That's right. Yeah, after his turn on Home Alone, they knew he could play a pretty good villainous role, and they were going to go with him. But people felt like he was not big enough in stature physically to match Arnold. And so his agent, Arnold's agent, suggested Sinbad because Sinbad was about the same height, same build.
Yeah,
And
well,
yeah,
I get it too because there's some times throughout this movie where Sinbad and Arnold are going back and forth and beating the crap out of each other. And when you have, no offense, but little people, Joe Pesci,
right,
big muscular Arnold, to have him physically beating up Arnold, to me, it doesn't really seem that believable.
right.
I mean, there's ways that you could get around it and make it more, he has to devise like Home Alone type tactics to take out Arnold.
Yeah, they could have
But
made it work.
they could have, but at the same time, I think the dynamic between Arnold and Sinbad worked really well. And the fact that on top of it, almost everything that Sinbad did in that movie was actually all improv as well. Most of it
Yes,
wasn't even
many of his and Arnold's lines together. One interesting thing about the Pesci thing is I look at a lot of scenes and a lot of the dialogue, and I'm like, I could totally see Pesci saying that, which is really interesting because most of it was ad log. But one thing that I find that I feel like wouldn't have been as good about the movie if they went with Pesci is Sinbad being a family friendly movie guy, especially coming into this movie,
mm-hmm.
off of House Guest and some of the other films he did. You know, they were almost kind of scared to cast him because of that. They're like, how can he play a villain? But he actually felt that he would bring sympathy to Myron. And I felt like he did. I felt like even with all the things Myron did, there was a part of me that still liked him. I didn't loathe him. And I feel like Pesci would have got to the point where I'm like, I loathe the guy. I want to see him just get his comeuppance.
Okay, because I mean, I've grown up with the whole shadiness that is like Leo Getz from Lethal Weapon,
Yep.
Joe Pesci in like Goodfellas and Casino, and movies like that, where he's a hardcore Italian mafia badass.
Right.
And at the end of the day, if you put him in that role, I'm not going to have the same emotional feelings about him by the end of the movie that I. So we're just going to rip the fucking band aid right off from the get go. And this movie is like literally almost 30 years old. So if you haven't seen it at this point, sorry, not sorry. But
Right.
at
There
almost
will
three
be
years,
spoilers.
at almost, yeah, I was going to say, at almost 3 years old on the show, you got to know that we're spoiling shit left and right. So, but I mean, there's a heart to the whole character of Myron. I mean, he's not doing. I mean, he's doing this to be as good of a father as Arnold. I mean, Arnold's trying to be a great dad for his son.
Right.
Myron's trying to be just as great of a dad for his son and not be a disappointment.
Right.
It
They
just
have the
so
same
happens that
motives. It's just one ends up being the protagonist and the other one ends up being the antagonist.
one pushes the envelope right to the edge but doesn't go over the cliff.
Right.
The other one pushes it right to the edge of the cliff and then fucking jumps.
Yes.
The one that jumps is Sinbad's character, Myron. But still, I mean, if you fully understand and grasp the concept of where he's coming from as a parent, I don't have kids, so I can't speak to that level. But like, I have two nephews that are probably right about the age of Arnold's son
Mm.
at this point. So, I mean, I get the whole fact that, especially this time of year, I want to give them, whatever their heart desires for Christmas. But at the same time, it's like they're also getting to that age where they want like the switches and the tablets and all of this expensive crap. And Uncle Casey is not made of fucking money, and
Right.
I'm not going to give in to the commercialism of consumerism of Christmas, because that's probably one of my least favorite parts of this season is the fact that um, especially starting last Friday, with last Friday being Black Friday, you hear
Right.
all the horror stories about people going to the store at 3 o'clock in the fucking morning to get the great deals, and the fights and the people getting trampled on and all of that. I have never ever gone shopping at 3 o'clock in the morning on Black Friday. I will never go shopping on Black Friday at all because I'm not going to contribute to that. But it's like, seriously, corporate America needs to not push their fucking agendas down everybody's fucking throat and create all this freaking chaos. because to me this chaos is what ruins the freaking holiday, and it's not what the holiday is about to begin with.
Well,
But
yeah. I mean, you got
at
a
the same
holiday.
time,
Mhm.
I was just gonna say that at the same time, this movie does a great job of satirically, ironically approaching the subject and making fun of it, and you get to laugh and enjoy a topic that can be very frustrating for us as adults.
Absolutely.
So
I mean,
I appreciate
when
that
the
100%.
yeah, definitely. Because I mean, it's one of those movies that just takes that whole idea of consumerism, toys being sold out, and it takes it to that extreme. I'm from what I remember, Randy Corn Fed. Is it Corn Fed? What is it? Corn Cold. Let me look it up here. I got it in my notes. Cornfold? Cornfield. But it's spelled with a K. Randy Cornfield, the guy who wrote it. He based it off of the sellouts that they had of Power Rangers, sellouts that they had Cabbage Patch Dolls. And then Chris Columbus, the producer, he did some rewrites based on experiences he had trying to find a Buzz Lightyear
Mm.
toy. But I feel it's hilarious because the one thing that I compare it the most to actually happened around the same year that the movie was put out. And that was the situation with Tickle Me
Tickle Me
Elmo.
Elmo.
Oh yeah. Like,
Yeah.
if you grew up during that time
I think
frame,
the
you all
Tickle Me Elmo
remember
was, yeah, fuck Tickle Me Elmo. I think it
right?
actually was the same fucking year too, which is why I remember it
Exactly.
so clearly.
Yep.
Because it's like this movie came out and it's making fun of like people beating the crap out of each other for a fucking toy and not being able to find the toy anywhere in any fucking store. And then yeah, you literally go shopping at this time and you walk into the freaking like Walmart and there's literally like no Tickle Me. You could find like a Tickle Me Cookie Monster or whatever, you know, kind of sort of like you could find in the movie you could find all the damn booster dolls that you wanted.
Hey, nobody likes Booster, okay?
Yeah, fuck Booster. But yeah, you couldn't obviously you couldn't find a damn Turbo Man anywhere in the world.
Right.
But I mean, I even remember going into some stores where they did some of the same things in real life that they did
Right, the
in
lottery.
Jingle All the Way. Though you'd walk into the store and you if you wanted Tickle Me Elmo at the time, you could get a freaking lottery ticket, and at a certain time they draw fucking numbers, and whoever got their number drawn, that was who got the limited number of Tickle Me Elmos that they had. So there is a lot of realism to this movie, but I thank God that the studio and Christopher Columbus and Brian Levant and Arnold and Sinbad and everybody that was a part of the movie did such a great job of making a joke out of it, because without the humor, I can really see this movie just being a complete and utter letdown. And I mean, even as low as this score is, could you imagine if you take the humor out of it,
Oh yeah.
how low the
I,
score could have gotten?
oh, it would have been
I mean, we're
terrible. I
talking
mean,
negative freaking numbers on Rotten Tomatoes.
right. Well, and it's the fact alone that there's humor helps it, but the fact that they then take that humor and they go in this surreal, almost Looney Tunes slapstick way with a lot of the humor, especially some of the violence. And there's quite a bit of violence in this movie, but it's done in such a cartoony way that
Oh
it
yeah.
really just it helps that tone of like, oh, this is terrible. This is what's wrong with society.
Well,
But then the next minute you're laughing because Arnold's punched a reindeer or a midget.
and even like the whole scene, like the first time that Arnold and Sinbad meet each other outside the damn
Mhm.
store, the first time, and then they get to go in and they open the doors and everybody just freaking steamrolls through the fucking door, and come to find out there's no Turbo Man dolls. They're all gone, and all of a sudden somebody yells out that there's some down the street or whatever, and they all turn around and it's like they're trying to get the hell out the door, or an old lady just walked out the door with the last one, and they're all like, "Ooh!" So they all take off to go, and like Arnold gets taken out, and then he gets up and he commandeers his kid's remote control car, and he's steering it to the store and takes out Sinbad, and you get the whole woo, and he goes freaking heels to ceiling. Oh, poor baby, and then Arnold takes off running. I mean, it. They went to the right place with the humor, and I can't reiterate it enough. Though, I mean, without this humor, this movie is just going to be a complete emotional letdown. And hats off to everybody. I mean, not even just Arnold and Sinbad, but even like the other aspect of the story with like the Phil Hartman character being the aggressive, perverted womanizer that he is.
Yeah,
I
Phil
mean,
Hartman, he
it,
helped make this movie. I mean, his character Ted, he plays that role so good where he comes off snarky and you just immediately you're just like, I don't like this guy.
well, and even like it bleeds his dirty pervertedness even bleeds over to like the kids too. Like I think it was towards the middle of the movie. Arnold's out trying to get a Turbo Man, and he calls home, and his kid answers the phone, and he's like, "I need to talk to your mom." And Jamie's all like, "I can't. She's outside petting Ted."
Yeah.
Ted, spoiler alert, is is the well, okay. Ted is Phil Hartman's character, who's the womanizer, but they also named the pet reindeer Ted too, which
Yeah, yeah. In the movie he gets
Arnold's
a
wife
pet
is out
reindeer.
petting the reindeer. But Arnold doesn't know that because Arnold's been out all freaking day trying to get a Turbo Man doll. So he doesn't know that there's a reindeer named Ted. So when his son tells him his mom's outside petting Ted, she thinks it's some perverted freaking sex game, and he gets pissed off and offended. So I mean, I
Right.
can't necessarily say that
But
I blame him, but
you can't blame him. I mean, Ted's a habitual line stepper throughout the movie. He's eating Arnold's cookies. He's putting lights on Arnold's house. He's in the house putting the star on the top of the tree, all while constantly, pervertedly hitting on the mom and also getting the attention of all the women in the neighborhood. Because Ted had it going
yeah,
on. I mean, he was a pervert, but they all loved him. They're like, Ted, can you come over and work on my sink? I got the tool for that. Like I was like, okay,
yeah,
Ted, I see you there. But yeah, Arnold definitely had reason to be
everything
upset.
everything that came out of Ted's mouth was some kind of weird perverted innuendo.
Yes. Her cookies are so yummy. Like this guy, Ted, man.
Spoiler alert, that may pop up before we go off the air on this episode. Not gonna say whether it will or not, but it might. So stay tuned for that as well.
All right.
Um, well, no, and even like the studio made worked out a deal with Walmart too, as well, to kind of sort of create a toy hype around this movie, where
Right.
they struck a deal with Walmart and they actually sold 200,000 Turbo Man dolls in Walmart the year that this movie came
Right.
out. So
They only made the 200,000. And funny enough, a lot of people gave them crap because they're like, you guys made this movie just to sell a toy. And funny enough, this was basically one of the few merchandise items that they had because of the fast production of the movie. They weren't able to do a lot of merchandising compared to most kid movies at the day. And growing up back then, I mean, watching Saturday morning cartoons, we had ads after ads for every kid movie thrown at us. Speaking of Space Jam, which came out the week before, they had so many toys available, so much merchandise available.
toys, clothing,
Mm.
everything,
Oh yeah, and all we got was Turbo Man. We didn't
athletic
even get
equipment.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, and they didn't even make Booster or what's the bad guy's name again? I know Myron, but was Doctor Demento?
yeah, I think it was. I literally just watched it again last night, and it's
You know,
escaping my brain.
I
But we'll go with
almost wrote the name down.
Doctor
So I'm like, I'm
Demento.
gonna forget the name of this bad guy again. And sure enough, I did. Should have wrote it down. So looking at it right now, Dementor. Yeah, Doctor Dementor.
Close enough.
Right.
Uh huh. Uh huh.
So one interesting fact I did come across when I was digging into the production of the movie is how Arnold came about being the star of this. Apparently, Arnold was going to star in the remake to
Yeah.
Planet of the Apes.
Yeah, I would say Arnold was not who they had in mind the first time. Well, even if he was the first person they had in mind, he was actually slated to work on Planet of the Apes, but because of production delays, he was actually able to get out of Planet of the Apes and join the Jingle All the Way cast. So,
Right. Right. Speaking of which, though, if you guys have never read the spec script for that version of Planet of the Apes, it was called Return of the Apes. It was by I want to say Tony Hayes, but amazing, hilarious, interesting. What could have been? I mean, it was a time travel thriller dealing with bioterrorist apes and Arnold riding around a flamethrower steampunk style tank. Um, if you haven't read it, look for it, read it. Fantastic. Back to the main thing.
I might have to go look that up after we get done. Well, no, it won't be right after we get done with this because I have a date with Monday Night Raw as soon as we're
Oh
done
yeah,
with this. So, but let's see. Were was there any memorable like quote type moments from the movie that jumped out at you?
absolutely. Let me look at my list here because I had a couple that were some of my favorite. I mean, of course, my absolute favorite quote is probably the quote everybody talks about the most. It's in your name. Put the cookie down. I mean, that's probably the one everybody thinks
One
of when they think,
hundred percent.
you know. But I like some of the throwaway one-liners. Like there's the scene where Howard Arnold's character is getting his car to go shopping, and Ted he's sitting there giving him crap, and he's like, Howard, they say it might get icy later. You might want to wrap some chains around those tires. And Howard just kind of mumbles under his breath, I should wrap some chains around you. I mean, a lot of those little one-liners there are pretty darn funny.
Well, and it all boils down to the chemistry between Arnold and his co-stars as well.
Absolutely.
You don't necessarily get to see it as much with between him and Rita Wilson,
Hmm.
but because of that, I think to that point, you don't really need the comedic chemistry between the two of them. You almost have to have that dramatic
No,
kind of
Rita
chemistry between
Wilson's
them
whole point
because
there is the conflict.
further the drama.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, because you get very early in this movie, you get the whole aspect that Arnold is a workaholic dad who doesn't keep promises very well to his family.
Right?
So, you
You're
kind
my
of sort of
number one
have to
customer.
have that. Yeah. Even to the point that's one of my favorite lines in the movie is he's sitting there and there's like this call montage where he's like going through all this stuff. You're my number one customer. You're my number one customer. And then his wife calls and he's like, I'll be at the karate thing, blah, 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 blah. I promise you're my number one customer. And it's like, that's not your number one customer, fucker. That's your wife, damn it.
Where's your head at? Right. Well, and that scene leads to one of my other favorite gags in the movie. Now, one thing I never really thought of until I rewatched this yesterday was one of the other things besides the comedy and the chemistry between Sinbad and Arnold that really takes this movie and knocks out the park are the side characters, those little one-off characters. Usually, it's a pretty nice cameo too that we get. Whether you're talking about Jim Belushi's Santa, Martin Mull's radio personality guy, but my favorite one that appears throughout the movie is the cop played by the late
Big
Robert
Show.
Conrad. Yeah, he's just great, and we get the first scene with him as Arnold's running late driving through traffic and decides to drive on the shoulder and speeds past a motorcycle bike, and this cop comes over and pulls him over.
Mhm.
And of course, Arnold tries to explain, hey, I'm running late to my kid's karate. And the cop's just not having it. If anything, it just pisses him off. You're not above the law. He pulls Arnold out the car. And then just that running gag of every single time him run into this cop and just causing more mayhem. It's hilarious. And it has a great payoff, too.
Well, I mean, it's like every time something bad is going to happen to Arnold, it seems like that cop is in some way, shape. I mean, you have the karate moment where the cop pulls him over, and I will say this: I've actually been pulled over while I was running late to work before, and tried to play the whole "I'm running late and I need to get to work,"
Hmm.
and they're like, "Well, you should have thought about that because if you weren't fucking speeding,
You'd
you
already
wouldn't
be
be
there.
sitting here right now getting this ticket." And
Right.
at the end of the day, now you're going to be even that much more late. So, but at the same time, you go back to the movie though. I mean, they take off to go try and get Turbo Man. He backs into the cop's motorcycle
It breaks
at
his
the
little
radio
mirror.
station when, yeah, at the radio station, um, Martin Mull ends up calling for security and they send the cops, and he's one of the ones that shows up at the scene. You know,
Right.
he's a part of the movie literally throughout the whole step of the process from going from the beginning of the movie all the way even to the end of the movie where um
Right. He's
okay, we've
thanking
already
Turbo.
spoiled a lot of it anyway, but yeah, well, yeah, because that's the thing is, you know, he's trying to get this Turbo Man doll for his kid, but ends up dressing up as Turbo Man in the parade that they're at, and ends up saving his kid's life. And the cop walks up behind him, doesn't know who it is, and you know makes a statement, thank you, Turbo Man. We need guys like you on the force. And then Arnold smiles and turns around, and the cop's just like, oh, fuck, really? You? Come on. Because, like, every
Oh, it's
time
great.
the cop does something, it's all because of fucking Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Right. Right. I love that scene too because Arnold turns around and he just has this big grin. He's like, yeah, I'm sorry about the bike and I'm sorry about the coffee and I'm sorry about the bomb. And the guy can't really do anything because Arnold's the hero right now. It's just one of those great
Yeah.
payoff moments of a scene. And I love that kind of thing. I love that kind of attention to detail, that little joke that runs throughout the movie. Um, it makes the movie that much better.
Well, and at the end of the day, it works its way throughout the entire movie, but it's not like I don't feel like that joke is overdone,
Right.
even though it's there every so often throughout the entire movie for an hour and a half.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, that definitely works out in its favor big time. Um, let's see if there was one of my other favorite ones lines from the movie that I had was Myron Sinbad's character when he goes off about they sit there and use subliminal messages to suck your children's minds out. And I know what I'm talking about because I went to junior college for a semester and studied psychology. I'm again with the fact that a lot of his lines were completely improv.
Right.
So I mean to just have those moments throughout, and even that's only one of like the times that he literally just spirals off out of nowhere and creates a completely epic line. I mean, seriously, we're what 35 minutes into this episode, and we've talked a lot about stuff that's happened to the movie. And if you haven't watched the movie yet, I highly recommend you go and watch it because just alone on the performance that Sinbad gives, it's worth the fact that you could go and get a Disney Plus subscription right now for like $2.99 a month for like the next 6 months. So I highly recommend doing it. Not that Disney is paying my salary by any stretch of the imagination, but they should. And if they do, I'll gladly publicize the mouse on the show. But at the same time, fuck the mouse.
Yeah,
Oh,
no, I'm right there with you because it's one of those movies that I think everybody kind of they either have missed it or they don't really give it much mind. It kind of gets lost in the shuffle. And let's face it, it's understandable. There's some
mhm.
great Christmas movies out there. There's some great Christmas comedies out there. Um, and this one, it's sometimes corny enough to be on that B movie level of corny. But I think it's what gives the movie heart. And I've never watched it and not laughed. And so it's one of those ones. If you want something that's gonna make you laugh, it's definitely one of those. If you're a fan of Arnold, definitely watch it. I mean, it's a good movie. It's got some memorable moments.
I, for people that know me, and hopefully Amanda will listen to this episode and definitely second this statement. But people know I'm not a huge Christmas movie fan. I do have favorite Christmas movies, but there aren't very many of them. Um, this movie is definitely one of them, um, especially as far as comedies go. The other favorite Christmas comedy actually will be coming up in 2 weeks. We'll be discussing National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. So,
Oh, love that movie.
spoiler alert, tune into that one too. I mean, even as much as I love the comedy in this movie, it's no match for the comedy in
Oh, none at all.
Christmas Vacation.
None at all,
I
dude.
mean,
That's the top one right there for me, man. Like I love that. I'm
we
actually hosting a movie night at my place next Friday, and we're gonna watch that.
we have a rule on the show that we will definitely revisit any movie that we've already done because by definition we honor the fact that not everybody is going to have the same feelings or emotional connection to a movie.
Right.
But this episode coming up in 2 weeks, where we discuss Christmas Vacation, will be, I believe, the first time we revisit a movie on the show.
Oh, nice.
So it's definitely a worthwhile movie to get a revisit
Oh
because,
yeah.
again, a lot of people will connect with this movie in different ways than some people will. And at the end of the day, I don't think I've ever heard anybody say anything bad about Christmas Vacation.
Yeah, I think it's
So
one of those few movies out there that most people, even the people that aren't a fan of it, don't hate it. They just it's not for me, you know.
yeah, and it's definitely not those overly. And when I so people, please don't hate message me for this because I'm not trying to be disrespectful by putting it this way, but it's probably the best way to describe it. It's not those overly sappy, dramatic, like A Christmas Carol or It's a Wonderful Life or Miracle on 34th Street, where you have that big melodramatic, you have the darkness throughout the movie, and then all of a sudden you have the rainbow of hope ending at the end. And,
Right.
it's just, you, you can get happy endings even in these two movies, being Christmas Vacation and Jingle All the Way, but you're going to have fun in the roller coaster along the way, getting from point A to point B to point C to point D, and then everywhere in between. So I don't have a whole lot more in my notes. Was there anything else that you maybe definitely wanted to cover before we get to our overall reviews?
Yeah, definitely. So one thing I did want to point out, um, as I was talking about, like some of the really cool cameos we have in there, there is a cameo from an early Vern Troyer in there. Matter of fact, it's an uncredited cameo. He did this movie a couple
Mhm.
years before he would blow up as Mini Me, but he plays the little small midget Santa. I apologize if that's not the right term to use, but he plays the little guy Santa that jumps on Arnold's head. And yeah, in a pretty memorable scene where the big giant Santa, played by Paul White, also known as the Giant, or AKA
Big
the
Show.
Big Show. And it's a hilarious scene where Arnold's in the middle of this big brawl with a ton of Santas, and this giant Santa is getting ready to just take him out. And this little Santa jumps on his head and he's trying to choke him. And as the guy goes to swing, Arnold ducks down, and you see Warren Troyer's little Santa just go whee, flying backwards into these boxes. It's one of those moments. I mean, I don't think many movies would do that today that are a kid movie, but man, I laughed and just couldn't stop laughing for a while. It was just so hilarious.
It's obviously well overdone
Hmm.
and not very realistic, but at the same time, that's what makes it funny.
Oh yeah, and there's many of those moments like that throughout the movie. There's the scene where him and Myron are in the diner, waxing about their losses, and Myron's telling him his story about growing up and not getting a toy from his dad, and boy, that's another good scene there. He goes on this rant about this toy, Omega 8 or something, but the guy has this gun that's like seven different guns, and he describes and does sound effects for each one of the guns. It's amazing. That's a great scene right there. That's another one I like. But during that scene, as
And
he's
even
explained,
even while he's doing it, he's like
he's
Arnold
still going. Yeah.
imagining his son as
Yes,
being
yes,
Myron, and he's got the alcohol bottle, and he's drinking
yeah.
along
Little
like Myron
Anakin
would be. And
Skywalker throwing back some like
exactly.
rum in this Melman outfit, and he just actually tips it back. I'm just like, man, this is such a movie of its times.
I mean, by most standards, if this was to be released like today, it'd get canceled in a freaking heartbeat,
Oh
just
yeah,
on
PETA
that
alone, like,
aspect alone.
how dare he feed the reindeer beer, let alone punch the reindeer, give it a black eye.
Yeah. Well, and then you get the whole like image of an 8 or 9 year old kid actually drinking.
Right,
I mean, even though it is like a mental picture in Arnold's head, it's still I
right,
can
right.
see people. Oh, they're condoning child drinking, and it's like that's not the freaking point. But
Yeah, exactly.
that's how people look at stuff now. Society isn't looked at with the satirical wink, wink that it needs to be looked at. Not judging, but
Right.
to each their own.
Well, and going back to Jake Lloyd, I feel like he did an excellent job. I mean, he's a kid actor and playing a kid. I mean, a lot of people look at that like, well, how hard was this job? But there's many times you get that child actor and they're either very amateurish and wouldn't, or they overdo it. And he shreds that line of playing that role perfectly, even when he has the more dramatic bits of like the time where Arnold and him are on the phone talking. You never keep your promises. What would you know about that? And I feel like he did a good job. But he wasn't very annoying. And a lot of times, not gonna lie, in some of these movies, I find the child actors to be very annoying. I'm just like, hurry up and finish and get off the screen. But in his role, I did not find him to be overly annoying. I felt he did a very good job. Now, his friend Ted's son, on the other hand, that little kid got on my nerves.
Yeah, that
Maybe
little
your
bastard
parents
was
should
very
get a
whiny,
divorce.
and yeah, it's like who the fuck encourages their damn next door neighbor slash buddy to have their parent encourage their parents to get a divorce? No, that's just not
Right.
cool, fool.
No, not at all. I haven't watched the movie the whole night. I just kept calling him. It's like it's little Cartman. It's Cartman. He just kept reminding me of Cartman, man.
That probably is a very good analogy for who that kid reminds me of. Ah,
Yeah, and
all
then one
right.
other thing before we get into the main thing that I did want to point out is just also the filming. The majority of the movie was filmed in the Mall of America. All the mall scenes were filmed in the Mall of America. Matter of fact, they even did the premiere in the Mall of America on the 16th. Arnold enjoyed his time filming this movie a ton because of that, because he got to go shopping in between filming. Um, he enjoyed it so much so that when they did the premiere, he donated some of the props for the movies to the Hollywood Cafe that was, or no, Planet Hollywood. Sorry, I was mixing that with a Hard Rock Cafe, but to the Planet Hollywood that they had in the Mall of America at the time. And then the rest
Yeah, I've
was filmed in
actually
California on a few of the sets, studio lots that they had out there.
I've driven by or been on a bus and ridden by the Mall of America. That place is fucking huge.
Oh, it looks
I
like
think
it.
that's probably the biggest mall I've ever seen in my entire life. I don't know how people can go shopping in that damn place, but to each their own.
Right.
So, um, so as a whole, in the grand scheme of things, what are your thoughts on the movie as a whole?
As a whole, I think it is a really cool window into a period of time. Consumerism is still there. It's still a lot of greedy people out there. As we were discussing earlier,
And
there's still a lot of people
it
out
ain't going
there.
anywhere anytime soon.
Yeah, yeah. But it's very different now than it was back then. I mean, Black Friday sales are still, having people going out to stores super late at night or super early, but it's kind of chilled out as far as the in person. Matter of fact, a lot of grocery stores that used to stay open all night actually close early on Thanksgiving these days. Um, but I think at the time, for getting that right, these places, they were big, they were crazy. The fact that like this movie came out and that same Christmas we had the Tickle Me Elmo situations, people fighting over things. You read stories about people having their dolls stolen. Um, I think it was a very good window into that time period. But done in a way to kind of make you laugh. So you're thinking about it, but you're also saying, hey, what's really important? And kind of Arnold gets, hey, family's more important. I just need to be there, and I think it's interesting because while the movie doesn't try to be overly moralistic and actually have this like he learned his lesson, he does learn a lesson of like, okay, you know what, I need to do a better job, kinda, because this movie does have a mid credit scene that I think is hilarious, and I really wish they would have made a sequel about. But we'll get to that. But yeah, overall, I think it's a cool window into the '90s, how things were going in the '90s, and that's not just for the consumerism part. That's for the comedy. Some of the aspects, like we talked about, that you wouldn't see done nowadays, like a kid drinking, animals being hit.
Mhm.
Some of the fight scenes. It had some great choreography that I feel like just really took this movie over the top. Whether we're talking about the warehouse Santa fight, or we're talking about the set piece at the end during the parade where Arnold dons the Turbo Man outfit on the parade float, and then Myron's character ends up donning. I gotta look the name up again. Dementor's
Doctor Dementor.
Doctor Dementor's outfit, and they have this cool fight. There's batarangs being shot. He used the rocket fist. There's the little Power Ranger s chaos demons that come out. And of course, Booster. Hey, those aren't the lines. Nobody likes you, Booster. But they have this cool battle. It leads to probably the most cheesy scene in the movie, but I forgive it because it just matches the tone, and that's where the suit Arnold's wearing has a full-fledged working rocket pack, and he just rockets all over the city. Of course, he doesn't know how to use it. He almost falls a couple times. He ruins somebody's Christmas dinner or Thanksgiving dinner, but it's still a really great scene. And so between the set pieces, the comedy, the cameos, I think it's just a really great movie that just doesn't get enough credit for being what it is, and that's entertaining.
So if you had to give it a score out of five, with one being horrible and five being completely amazing, what would you rate the movie?
Oh, easily I would give it a 4. Actually, you know what? I won't say easily, and I'm gonna revise that. I give it a 3.5 because it's a good movie. It's definitely better than average, but I don't think it's a amazing movie, and it definitely is not a 5. But definitely solid 3.5 for me.
So as far as my thoughts go,
Hmm.
like um, like we've talked about throughout the entire episode, this movie completely satirizes everything that I hate about the commercial consumerism of the holiday being Christmas. But at the same time, this is a completely fun, enjoyable movie that you can turn on and just enjoy, and you don't have to really think about what you're watching. Just
Hmm.
enjoy the fucking ride. It makes me laugh. It makes me smile. And the dynamic and chemistry between Arnold and Sinbad is out of this fucking world. As far as my rating goes, I mean, again, like you said, it's not obviously a 5 out of 5 movie. Um, I stop and think about some of the other movies that I've given a 4 or a little bit higher to, and it's like I can't even put Jingle All the Way necessarily in that category as well. So I'll probably go 3 out of 5 like you,
Yeah, and that's
which
the
is not
sad
a bad
reason I
score.
went there. Right.
Yeah, it's not a bad movie, and 3 out of 5 is not a bad score
No,
by any
not at
stretch of the
all.
imagination. I mean, if you average it out, you know, like on an A, B, C, D, F scale, like report card style, 3.5 is probably about a C average, which is
Right.
what which is what this movie is realistically. I mean, you can love this movie and completely accept the fact that it's, if you want to truly think about the movie, it's probably a C average. It's an average movie, but that doesn't mean you have to it. By acknowledging that, it doesn't mean that you hate it by any stretch of the imagination. You can. I love movies that critics have given absolute shit scores too. I
Oh,
mean,
right.
I grew up loving I grew up loving Howard the fucking Duck, and that's one of the worst rated movies of all time.
Well, and one
Doesn't
thing
mean
you
that
gotta
I
keep
hate it.
in mind, yeah. Well, one important thing to keep in mind anytime you are talking movies, it's an art form. Yes, there's some entertaining, but it's still a form of art. And like any art, it's in the eye of the beholder. So you can have a movie that hits all your buttons that you love, but still acknowledge it's not the best movie in the world. But for me, it's one of my favorites. And that's kind of this movie for me. I know it's not a great movie, but I don't think it's a terrible movie. It's kind of right there in between. But for me personally, it just hits so many notes of comedy with me that I love it.
Oh, exactly. And it's one of those Christmas movies that if I put myself in the right mindset this time of year, I could sit down and watch it every year for the rest of my life and never actually probably hate the movie and get tired of
Right.
it. So if you're at this point and still haven't seen the movie and still listen to the whole freaking show, seriously, people, what the hell? But at the same time, I will highly, and I'm sure Joshua as well, will highly recommend you as soon as this episode's done, because we're almost done anyway. But finish listening to the episode and go turn on Disney Plus and go watch this movie, because it's one of those movies that you will laugh at. You'll find something to laugh at some point, whether you laugh uncontrollably like I do throughout the whole entire movie, or whether it's just a moment or two throughout the movie. You Let's be honest, you'll laugh at something.
Yeah, yeah. Definitely watch the movie. If you still have doubt, watch some clips on YouTube, man. Don't go watch Jingle All the Way 2. I like to pretend that movie doesn't exist, but for this purpose, I'll acknowledge it does exist. But that one easily is a 1 out of 5. It'd be a 0 or a -1 if that score existed. Not a good movie, and I love Larry the Cable Guy, but it was just, hey, we have
Yeah.
this licensing, let's make a movie. you know. Um,
Yeah. Not gonna lie.
Whereas
That's probably a -5 out of 5 for me.
yeah,
Ghost Rider.
it's a terrible movie. Like if they're gonna make a sequel, in my opinion, there's a mid-credit scene where everything's done. The family's kind of enjoying themselves, and the wife is just like, Arnold or Howard, with everything you did today to get that doll for Jamie, you really proved that you're a loving husband. And I just have one thought. What did you get me? And he kind of looks at the camera like, oh crap. And so,
Yeah.
for me, I'm like, man, how awesome would it have been to see a movie set maybe during Valentine's Day where he's kind of in the doghouse because he messed up her Christmas gift and he's trying to make this grand gesture. And here's Myron, fresh out of jail, dating the chick that he started talking to, pen pals with jail prisoners. And they end up in this contest trying to one up each other on romanticism. And I think it could have been great. And then they could have lambasted and satirized the hell out of the consumerism of Valentine's Day, but
'Cause
it's a little too
at the
late.
end of the day, let's be honest. Like, well, yeah, because they're way too old now to do
Oh,
that shit.
way too old.
But I mean, Valentine's Day is almost as commercial as Christmas is.
Oh yeah, easily.
So, I mean, yeah, that would have been an easy sequel for them to do.
Right.
So, I think that's going to just about do it for the episode, though. This
All
was
right.
definitely a lot of fun. As always, I can't end the episode without a big hearty thank you to the dozens because them being here and listening each and every week is all the reason why we are rapidly approaching our third anniversary and 200th episode. So, thank you to them for being here each and every week. So, just because we haven't necessarily approached the topic in the intro, would you like to let the listeners know about what you've got coming up podcastually, where they can find
Yeah,
you?
absolutely. Hey, so I want to thank you guys for allowing me to be on the show. And my name's Josh. And coming soon, coming very soon, coming in January, the 20th to be exact, I'll be launching my own podcast called Toontastic Journeys. And it's all about taking it back to that nostalgia of Saturday morning cartoons. We will basically talk about a cartoon each episode, the highs, the lows, and the in between, that minutia, and just take it back to have that warm feeling of the big bowl of cereal and your favorite cartoons. So be on the lookout for that. And once again, Kasey, thank you for having me on. It's been a great evening, and it's been great reminiscing this movie, one of my favorites.
Definitely. Obviously, this was a great amount of fun. And anytime you want to come back and pick another movie, you are more than welcome to come back. Um,
Oh yeah, there will be
yeah.
another one before my next one because we already have my next one scheduled for next October. This upcoming one, but we'll do someone in between there, maybe more than one.
Oh, I'm sure we'll probably do more than one
Oh
before
yeah,
that. So, with all of that said, I'm not going to run. Well, I'll run down a couple of the movies we've got coming up here in the next few weeks. Um, but there's a whole lot of stuff that's either already been recorded or is coming up. Um, like I said earlier, we've got Christmas Vacation coming up in a couple weeks. We've got Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix coming up in like the week before Christmas.
nice.
Uh, Violent Night and It's a Wonderful Life are coming up on Christmas
Ooh,
Day.
another one
So
of my favorite Christmas movies.
we'll be doing a Christmas double feature on the 25th. So stay tuned for that as well. Um, let's see, Chris and I will be discussing the program at the end of the month to kind of coincide with the college football playoff. And then coming up early in 2024, we've got my episode of The Mummy as well as The Fifth Element and Where the Heart Is with Ashley. So stay tuned for all of that as well.
Yeah, can I throw one more thing out there, Kasey? Do you mind?
Yeah, go
Hey,
right ahead.
just want to also let y'all know to just be on the lookout. We don't have a date yet, but pretty soon, me, Kasey, as well as CJ and DeAndre will be going season to season reviewing the Big Bang Theory. So be on the lookout for that one.
Yeah, definitely be on the lookout for that one. I'm currently on pause with my binge on that because I'm literally on season 5 right now. And
Oh, you do.
I am trying to not be done a long time before the rest of y'all. I don't know
Yeah,
where.
take your time. I just started season 3 this morning.
Yeah, I was gonna say Dre was on season 3 like 2 weeks ago, so I
Right.
don't know where. I don't know
And I
where he's
know
at.
CJ's taking a minute because he's been having trouble finding it. And so I don't know where he's at, but I know he's kind of been struggling a little bit. He has a remedy, but if he doesn't figure it out, I'll help him out.
It's on Max, CJ. Just saying. But yeah, definitely season to season will be coming up, and as we get close to releasing that episode, I will be letting the listeners know because the new thing that we're going to be doing with season to season is we're going to be talking about an entire show in an episode or two. Like the shows like Big Bang Theory that went on for like 12 years. We're not trying to cram all of that into one episode. So we divided it into
Breaking into 2.
season 1 through 6 and then season 7 through 12. So when those episodes are ready to release, you will definitely get updated here as well as to when you can tune in and listen to all of our thoughts on that because Big Bang was chef's kiss for a TV show.
Yeah.
I love it, and I'm ready to talk about all things Penny Hofstetter. So, yeah. With all of that said, I will thank everybody for being here. Thank you, Joshua, for being here. And I will thank everybody and remind everybody that we hope you guys come back for an evening at the movies. And before we leave, you all get a nice little Christmas present of a video montage. So, with all that said, again, thank you guys, and we will see you guys next week.
Oh, Howard, excuse me, but your wife's cookies are out of this world.
Who told you you can eat my cookies?
Oh, these cookies! I gotta get the recipe from Les.
Put that cookie down! Now!